There is a wound you have been carrying. You may not speak of it often. You may have learnt to move through your days as though it is not there. But it is there, in the way you flinch at certain words, in the way you hold back when you want to open, in the quiet ache that visits you in unguarded moments. What if that wound is not the end of your story? What if the very thing that broke you is also what is preparing you for a deeper, more compassionate life than you could have lived without it? In this teaching, we will walk together through 5 reflections on how to heal emotional wounds, not by erasing what happened, but by learning to carry it with wisdom, with gentleness, and ultimately, with grace. If these teachings speak to something inside you, I invite you to like this video and share it with someone who may need it today. If you are new here, please subscribe and click the bell so you are notified when new teachings are released. And when you are ready, let us begin. There is a moment, after something breaks inside you, when the pain becomes so familiar that you begin to mistake it for yourself. You wake with it. You carry it through your days. You introduce yourself to the world through it, the one who was abandoned, the one who was betrayed, the one who lost something that cannot be returned, and slowly, without noticing, you stop wearing the wound and begin to become it. This is the first confusion that must be gently untangled. When a thorn pierces the skin of your hand, you do not say, "I am a thorn." You say, "There is a thorn in my hand." You recognize that you are the one who is hurt, not the thing that caused the hurting. And yet, with emotional pain, we lose this distinction almost immediately. The mind, in its attempt to make sense of suffering, wraps the pain around the self like a second skin. It becomes identity. It becomes the story we tell. It becomes the lens through which we see everything that follows. The Buddha taught that the self is not a fixed and solid thing. It is not a stone sitting at the bottom of a river, unmoved by the current. It is more like the current itself, always moving, always changing, shaped by conditions but never permanently defined by any one of them. What this means in practical terms is that the pain you carry right now is a condition arising within you. It is not the truth of what you are. This does not make the wound less real. It does not ask you to dismiss what you have suffered. It simply creates a small space, a breath of distance between you and the pain. And in that space, something becomes possible that was not possible before. Healing does not begin with fixing. It begins with seeing clearly. There is a natural instinct, when something burns, to pull away, to run from the heat. And so when emotional pain rises, grief, shame, anger, heartbreak, the mind reaches, almost immediately, for something to make it stop. We fill the silence with noise. We keep ourselves moving, so we never have to be still. We find ways to numb, to distract, to push the feeling just far enough below the surface that we can continue functioning. We become very skilled at this, and we call it coping. But there is a difference between coping and healing. A fire that is covered does not go out. It waits, and often it spreads underground, where you cannot see it, until one day it surfaces somewhere unexpected, in a sudden rage, in an inexplicable sadness, in a fear that seems to have no origin. The pain you refuse to feel does not disappear. It finds another door. The practice I am pointing to is not easy. It asks something that runs against every instinct the frightened mind possesses. It asks you to turn toward the fire, instead of away from it. Not to throw yourself into it, not to drown in it, but to sit beside it, to look at it with steady, quiet eyes and say, "This is here. I can feel this. I am not destroyed by feeling this." In the Zen tradition, there is a teaching about the monk who, when asked how to escape the heat of summer, replied, "Go to the place where it is neither hot nor cold." The student asked where such a place could be found. The answer was, "Be fully in the summer heat. Be completely in the cold of winter. Do not resist what is. Resistance creates suffering on top of suffering. But presence, simple, honest presence with what is already here, begins to loosen the grip of pain without forcing it to leave before it is ready. You do not have to like the fire. You only have to stop running from it. There is a river near the monastery where I have walked for many years. In the spring it runs fast and loud, carrying with it broken branches, mud, the debris of the season. It is turbulent and brown, and sometimes difficult to cross. But the river does not worry about this. It does not look at what it carries and decide that this is now its permanent nature. It simply moves. And by summer it is clear again, quiet, reflecting the sky without effort. The river does not hold its wounds. The Buddha's teaching on impermanence, anicca, is often presented as a teaching about loss. We hear it, and we think of things ending, of people leaving, of the fragility of what we love. And yes, it is that. But it is also something far more merciful than it first appears, because if everything that arises also passes, and this is not a philosophy but an observable fact of existence, then this too applies to pain. The grief you carry right now has not always been with you. There was a time before it, and there will be a time, not forced, not manufactured, when its weight is different from what it is today. This is not wishful thinking. This is the simple truth of how all conditioned things behave. They change, they shift, they move. Where people suffer most is not in the pain itself, but in the belief that the pain is permanent. The mind looks at what it feels today and projects it endlessly into the future. It says, this is how it will always be. This is who I will always be. And that projection, that story of forever, is often more unbearable than the wound itself. What would it mean to hold your pain the way the river holds the debris of spring fully, without denial, but also without clutching? To let it be here, knowing it is moving, knowing that you are the river and not the broken branch passing through. Nothing that arises in the mind is carved in stone, not even the deepest sorrow. We are often taught from very early in life that to care deeply for oneself is a kind of selfishness, that to tend to your own wounds before the wounds of others is weakness, or indulgence, or a failure of character, and so many people who are extraordinarily kind to the suffering of others become remarkably cruel to their own. They speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they loved. They withhold from themselves the very gentleness they give so freely to the world. This is one of the deepest forms of suffering I have witnessed, and it is also one of the most invisible. The practice of metta, loving kindness, begins in its traditional form with oneself. This surprises many people. They expect it to begin with others, with the outward movement of care. But the teachers who developed this practice understood something essential, that you cannot give from emptiness, that the compassion you extend to others must have a source. And if that source is never replenished, never turned inward, it eventually runs dry. What remains is not virtue, but exhaustion. To offer loving kindness to yourself does not mean pretending the wound is not there. It does not mean manufacturing a happiness you do not feel. It means something quieter and more honest than that. It means speaking to the part of you that is hurting the way you would speak to a child who has fallen, not with judgment, not with impatience, not with the demand that they get up immediately and stop crying, but with a steady voice, with presence, with the simple acknowledgement that what happened was hard, and that the pain makes sense, and that you are not alone inside it. There is a phrase used in loving kindness practice, "May I be free from suffering," not, "I should not be suffering," not, "I am weak for suffering," simply, "May I be free." It is a wish offered gently, without force, and in the act of wishing it for yourself, something in the heart begins, slowly to soften. The wound cannot heal in an atmosphere of self-contempt. It heals in warmth, and you are the one who must provide it. There is a Japanese art form called Kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken pottery with gold. When a bowl or a cup shatters, the pieces are gathered, and the cracks are filled not with something meant to hide the damage, but with something that makes the damage luminous. The repaired object does not pretend it was never broken. It carries its history openly, and in doing so becomes more beautiful than it was before. This is what returning to wholeness actually means. Not the erasure of what happened, not the recovery of some prior self that existed before the wound. That self is gone, and trying to return to it is like trying to return to a shore you have already sailed past. What is possible, and it is something far richer, is to become the person who has moved through this, who has sat with the fire, who has felt the impermanence of even the deepest pain, who has learned to offer themselves the kindness they always deserved. The wound becomes part of you in a different way than it did at the beginning. At the beginning it was a rupture, something that broke the story of your life in two. But carried with awareness, with compassion, with the understanding that suffering is not a punishment, but a universal condition of being alive, it becomes something else. It becomes wisdom. It becomes the quiet capacity to recognize pain in others, because you have known it in yourself. It becomes depth. This does not mean the hurt disappears entirely. There may be moments, even years from now, when something stirs it again, a sound, a season, a particular quality of light, and when that happens, you will know what to do. You will not run. You will not collapse. You will sit with it, as an old practitioner sits with a familiar difficulty, with patience, with steadiness, with the knowledge that you have been here before and found your way through. You are not what broke, you are what continued. And the gold in the cracks is not decoration, it is evidence. It is proof that something was shattered, and that you, with great care and great courage, put it back together. Healing is not a single moment, it is a direction. And by arriving here, by giving this time and this attention to your own inner life, you have already taken a step in that direction. That is not a small thing. That is in fact everything. Carry these practices with you as you leave this space. The first each morning before the day pulls you outward. Place one hand on your chest and say quietly to yourself, "The pain I carry is not who I am." Let that distinction settle into the body before you rise. The second, when a difficult emotion surfaces today, resist the instinct to push it away. Give it 60 seconds of honest attention. Breathe into it. Name it simply. This is grief. This is fear. This is longing. You do not have to fix it. You only have to acknowledge that it is here. The third, find one moment today to offer yourself the words of loving kindness. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free from suffering. Say it without irony, without rushing. Say it as though you mean it. And if it feels strange, say it especially then. The fourth, write down one way your wound has changed you for the better. One thing you understand now that you did not before. One kindness you are capable of because of what you have been through. Let the gold in the crack become visible to you. These are not grand gestures. They are small, quiet acts of turning toward yourself. And it is in exactly these small acts, practiced with patience over time, that real healing lives. If this teaching has been useful to you, please take a moment to like this video. It helps more people find their way to these reflections. Leave a comment below sharing what resonated with you, or share the video with someone who is quietly carrying something heavy. If you have not yet subscribed, I warmly invite you to do so, and to click the bell so that each new teaching finds its way to you. We walk this path together, one step at a time,